The second is a very well-known political commentator and an 11-time New York Times best-selling author, which puts her actually 11 times more than any of my books have done. I'm going to bring out now, please welcome Cenk Uygur and Ann Coulter.
But at the same time, at some point, we got to move on, so we'll move on, okay? So, Ann, great to have you here. So, let me start with this question. Now that Stephen Colbert has broken character, and you've outlasted him, is it time for you to break character?
But it's an act. You know, maybe you gotta up your game. If I'm writing 11 New York Times bestsellers and, oh, I'm just faking. But I must tell you, if you were gonna fake, nobody would say, I know, fake being a conservative. It's like saying, you know, no, you didn't really kill Cecil the Lion. You're just doing that to get attention. No, why would you want to be a conservative? You're denounced, you're attacked. You're not going to be invited on most TV shows or promoted. You will not be celebrated. Why would anyone put on an act to be a conservative in today's media culture?
Well, there is a good answer for that. Because, honestly, it's a pretty good racket. So if you're an African-American who's a conservative, or you're a woman who's willing to speak against other women, you will get on Fox News.
I specifically made a point of not writing about women's issues. I kind of agree with that. I encourage female conservatives not to write about feminism, because I think that is kind of, come on, I mean, it's not just women, it's, oh, look, I'm a woman and I'm a conservative, oh, look, I'm a young person and I'm a conservative, oh, look, I'm a black, so what, do you have something to say? So, no, I have absolutely not done that. I write about history, I do Joe McCarthy, obviously immigration with the latest book, Darwinism, mobs, the French Revolution, impeachment. I have very specifically avoided writing anything. I didn't write about Hillary Clinton, I wrote about Bill Clinton. And, you know, people only say it's a good gig after it works. When I started out, and I think we're probably going too long on my career, which is boring, but when I started out, look, I started out with other conservatives. I started on MSNBC the first day they were on. And without naming names, I'll tell you, they knew the way to get ahead. And it wasn't to keep being fired by MSNBC by saying conservative things. I just happened to be practicing law, and every time they'd fire me, I said, I don't care, I'm just going to go back and practice law. I just did MSNBC because I wanted the free flights to New York, and this is New York.
Well, I would know a thing or two about not being welcome on MSNBC. And trust me, it's not just conservatives. So apparently they're not overly fond of progressives either. So now part of the reason that I ask, Ann, is because you've made such outrageous comments, and you're aware of that. And I'm going to share some with you right now. And I'm trying to understand your motivation. First thing I do in an interview is try to figure out, hey, where you're coming from. And you've said that, you know, in a lot of ways, like Andrew Breitbart told me in one of the last interviews he did, that he's a provocateur. So you say you like to stir the pot. So I'm trying to get to the essence of what that means. So for example, there's a quote, I think the government should be spying on all Arabs, engaging in torture as a televised spectator sport, dropping daisy cutters wantonly throughout the Middle East, and sending liberals to Guantanamo. Right. So let's dive into the motivations of that. Is that exactly what you actually believe? Is that a joke? Hence, are you a comedian? Can you tell us a joke now? No, but in all seriousness, what's the motivation there?
Look, there are a lot of writing techniques. I feel like I'm an English teacher whenever, people fixate on this line or that line, and I have to explain what hyperbole is and what understatement is, and this is a surprise. I don't think I should stir the pot only because that sounds like a cliche, but I would say I write in a way that will not only entertain my readers, but entertain me. To get a book to press, you read over so much, the same, chapters over and over again. This last book, I cut 200 pages a month before it came out because I wanted to keep it short and readable, and it's totally readable, and I highly recommend you all read it. It's shorter than a book, 100 pages of footnotes. You can zip through it in the evening. It's lots of fun. But you're editing. You're going through it with the lawyers. You're going through it with your agents, your friends. I want to give myself a laugh, and this is how I talk. This is why did Churchill? You could say, why did he speak in a certain way? Well, of course you're trying to get attention for what you're saying because you're selling a point and you want to do it the best way you can. And
so
explaining to people that I'm responding and I'm mimicking this and here, this is hyperbole, and this is exactly, go back to English class.
So it's a little bit of marketing. It's a little bit of marketing.
The same way Churchill will. He'll have a little bit of marketing.
Okay. So then I wonder why you think that marketing for this character works for the Republican base. So when you say you would like...
I don't care about the Republican base.
But that is who you sell books to.
No. But I don't want to cut you off because that you're starting with a premise that isn't true. In fact, I would say I am critical of people who are what probably in most of the eyes of you people here at you see as in my slot. I think too many conservative, spokesmen, leaders, talk radio, writers, I think too many of them are followers and not leaders. No, I will tell you what to think. I'm not figuring out where you are. And I'll give you an example to get back to what I want to talk about, which is the current book. I've been talking about immigration for a long time, and I'd go to tea parties or Lincoln Day dinners with Republicans, and often there would be, other speakers on stage, including some famous speakers, and it used to really drive me crazy that they'd get up on stage and, shout out Sarah Palin, so that they'd get a big applause line. No, nobody was ever expecting me to talk about immigration. I'd do a little of the things that, were topical and in the news, and then I would get straight to immigration. I will tell the Republican base what they ought to be thinking.
Okay. So now
I'm not playing to anybody.
Well, agree to disagree. So we're going to talk about immigration in a second. You mentioned women, and I want to get to some of your quotes about women as well, because you have addressed that topic.
What are you, Megyn Kelly?
If we want to question people's gender, okay, we can go down that road. Okay. So, but you said you're doing marketing, you're selling, right? So, but you're selling to someone. Okay, fine, you're going to tell Republican base, but who are you, when you say you'd like to wantonly murder Arabs throughout the Middle East, who are you marketing to?
Okay, again, I'm making a point. I don't know when that column was written. You'd have to read the whole thing, but I would say it right now. And what my argument would be is as follows. I was a huge supporter of the Iraq War. I'm angrier at Obama for destroying our victory there than I am at Iraq. lot more shocking things. Break it up with that. But now, having seen, I live in a country that would elect a president who would destroy our victory in Iraq. I don't see the point in having Americans die for wars like that. I mean, there were a lot of reasons, as I've said, to take out Saddam Hussein. The least of them was weapons of mass destruction. That was like a gag to taunt the UN and the New York Times and liberals. I don't go through all the reasons, but it was a beautiful country for regime change. The regime change worked. They were waving the purple fingers. Everything was great. And then Obama decides to withdraw every last troop. Now that I know we live in a country that can elect a president who would withdraw every troop and turn our victory into a defeat, I would say there's no point in trying to solve anything in the Middle East. It's always been a hellhole. It will always be a hellhole. After the 9/11 attack, I'm a pacifist who is for the liberal use of daisy cutters and nukes.
Okay. So, I'm glad you guys agree with the banning use of nuclear weapons. And so, that gets to the heart of what we're talking about here, Ann, because you said weapons of mass destruction was a gag. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people didn't know that it was a gag.
They did if they were reading me.
And I'm pretty sure the mainstream media took it as real. They certainly reported it that way. The Republicans sold it as real. So it is a little hard to tell when you guys are having a little bit of a laugh about a war you're going to start where hundreds of thousands of civilians are going to die. So when you say, hey, let's drop daisy cutters and nukes, I don't know if you're joking, doing hyperbole, and you say you should go back to English class, but I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about 2 or 3 of your supporters who are like, yes, let's drop the nukes!
No, I do.
Because I don't think they think that you're kidding.
I'm not kidding.
Okay, so you would like to, do you know what happens when you, no, Ann, I gotta ask you. Do you know what happens when you drop a nuclear weapon? It incinerates everyone in the neighborhood. So, women, children, men, grandmothers. ISIS, when they put somebody in a cage and burned them alive, we thought they were the worst monsters on earth. You say you'd like to do that on a grand scale, because that's what a nuclear weapon does.
I'm saying oh, for fun, let's do it right now. I'm saying in response to 9/11, yes, we should not have sent ground troops. We should should have dropped, in retrospect, now that we know that we're in a country that would elect Barack Obama, instead of bothering to create a democracy in Iraq, which we did, and which was working beautifully. We should treat Iraq basically the same way, at least under Bush, we treated Afghanistan. I mean, regime change was always stupid in Afghanistan. Why did your guy Obama send more troops to Afghanistan? And aren't we getting back to immigration, the topic of my
So, first of all, I disagreed with Obama on sending more troops to Afghanistan. Hey, we found agreement. You see that? Politicon is working. But I missed it. I'm going to ask you about immigration in the very next question, but I missed it. Did you say we should have dropped nukes on Iraq instead? Because you said after 9/11 nukes, and I missed who you wanted to drop the nukes on.
Okay, you're going to force me to say the reasons we needed to take out Saddam Hussein.
No, but it was in nukes.
No, well, it's kind of important. Number
Okay.
one, I mean, everybody talks about, you know, the red line in Syria, or you know, whether to take out Assad. Look, everything that these Johnny-come-lately liberal and conservative hawks are so enthusiastic about doing now, Saddam was that times 10. He tortured people as much, worse, more people than ISIS did. I mean, bringing in men and attaching electrodes to their genitals, raping women in front of their husbands, killing family members in front of other family members. If we're looking at pure humanitarianism, there's a reason to take Saddam out. Saddam had sheltered, harbored, funded terrorists. They won 1993 World Trade Center bomber who got away. Oh, where does he end up? Surprise! In Iraq. In fact, the guy who was the mastermind of the Achille Lauro hijacking. Where does he end up? He ends up in Iraq. So you have, Iraq has a lot of oil. It's a crucial part of the world. I never understood the argument, we're going to war for oil. Well, yeah, I wish. We need oil. Why shouldn't we go to war for oil? It's like saying, oh, you're just going to war for oxygen. Yeah, we need it. In fact, we didn't get their oil, but that's a good reason. Saddam also tried these are our real reasons. But Democrats in the New York Times, no, they won't go to war anyplace unless the UN improves, unless they get the permission slip signed by the UN. That's why we threw in, just to taunt liberals, oh, and by the way, he has violated UN resolution after UN resolution. Is that why Anne wanted to go in? That was just, okay, liberals, you say we have to be ruled by the UN, he's not following the UN. But the point is, if they're leaving that, the arguments, or the specific argument directed at liberals out, there are a lot of reasons to take out Saddam. But I do not think any American should have died for it, now that it has all been given away. Do not do that again until we live in America that will not elect a Barack Obama. In that case, yeah, we want to do what your guy is doing. Obama and drop a lot of drones all over. And drop a lot of data cutters all over. But I don't want to be spending American money. I don't want to be spending American lives if it's just going to be given away.
Okay, I should have also clarified in the beginning, no filibusters as well.
Well, technically the topic of this panel is immigration.
No, it's actually not. That's not what we're saying.
That's not how it was sent to me.
Now, first
Where's
off,
John Mack?
okay. I'm happy to get clarification on that. First of all, I like that when you said we should just simply take their oil, there was only one person left clapping. Like, us, let's steal their oil. Yeah, me? Okay. So, the reason I mentioned the thing about the filibusters is what I had asked you is you said you want to drop nukes. So would you have dropped a nuke? I get your reasons why. You thoroughly explained how much you hate Saddam Hussein. I think we're all with you that he was a bad guy, a terrible dictator. So would you have dropped a nuke? I mean, that's what. And you get what I'm saying. I'm trying to figure out: do you really mean it? Is it just a joke? If it's a joke, they don't get that it's a joke. It could be dangerous. Would you have dropped a nuke?
Nuke, daisy cutter, drone. It doesn't matter. And by the way, this complaint about filibustering, the way question and answer is supposed to work is the question and the answer. And I've given the same answer now 16 times.
Okay. So now, according to my rule, I'll move on because you clearly answered it. You would have dropped a nuke, and Saddam probably would have died, as well as maybe a million other people.
Uday and Qusay.
And 995,000 innocent people.
Babies
burned alive. But hey, we're having fun. It's a hyperbole.
Doesn't really care about 9/11, but I'm
So let's go to 9/11. I was going to go to immigration, but you mentioned 9/11. Here's what you said about the 9/11 widows. They believed the entire country was required to marinate in their exquisite personal agony. This is about the 9/11 widows. These broads are millionaires, lionized on TV and in articles about them, reveling in their status as celebrities, and stalked by grieferazzis. I have never seen people enjoying their husband's death so much. Another hyperbole?
Nope.
So you're now saying you're outraged by 9/11, except for the people who lost family members there, who you think are horrible people and enjoying their husband's death.
No, they were using these women, their status as victims, to promote political points. And no, actually, most 9/11 families were really quite happy with what I had to say.
So you didn't mind using 9/11 for your regime change that you wanted to do, a political move that you just said you wanted to do regime change that was political, and you used 9/11 as an excuse to do it. They lost their family members, but you had the nerve and the gall to want to attack 9/11 victims.
Right. I think last decade was kind of a snooze, but I will answer.
9/11 victims snooze.
I don't go on and say, and yet you can't attack me because I'm a victim. That is a chapter on human shields, and look, make your argument. They use their status as victims to go on TV and push for particular political results. When I make a political argument, I don't say, oh, and you can't attack me because my father died yesterday, and you can't attack me because these bad things happen. I hate when liberals do this. They do it all the time. They send out a victim to make their political argument.
you just gave to people who lost their husbands in 9/11? It seems like you deeply care about 9/11. You really, really care. Okay, so.
I think their big thing was that we had to have, what was it, a Department of Homeland Security, and I think they didn't want to go into Iraq, and we have to look, I've said it, let's move on.
All right, so immigration.
I don't like victims making arguments, that's the point of that. They weren't the only example.
Okay.
And liberals do it all the time.
Okay, that's okay. All right. So, on immigration, you said about Latinos, there's a cultural acceptance of child rape in Latino culture that doesn't exist in even the most dysfunctional American ghettos. When it comes to child rape, the whole family gets involved.
It's a really spicy book. I suggest you read it. It's about 100 pages of the whole family getting involved, including, I mean, all of these. The way you end up finding them is they're often famous cases, and both the government hides the statistics, but the media, and that's a lot of what my book is about, how the media hides the truth of all these immigrant crimes. And in doing my research, it was driving me crazy, so I have all these Spot the Immigrant chapters where, here's the New York Times article on it, here's the Houston Chronicle article on it. And it's not until, there's a trial or the INS and translators show up in court that you figure out that Baby Hope, New York City was put through the search for the rapist and murder of Baby Hope for 20 years with millions of taxpayer dollars, the entire city involved in this. I mean, it made international news. This poor little 4-year-old girl's body found in a cooler off the Henry Hudson Parkway. Police, the resources that were devoted to this case, 20 years later, they finally get it. It's a whole nest of Mexican illegal aliens. The victim, the mother, everybody in the family knew. And all of the mainstream media articles, Daily News, New York Times, People Magazine, ABC, CBS, all of them, none of them mention that these were illegal aliens from Mexico. Same thing with a very famous gang rape down in Texas, more recently, gang rape murder of 2 little girls, 14 and one just turned 15 years old, cutting through a park in Texas on their way home from a pool party one summer night, and just a heinous, sickening gang rape. The girls were stomped, beaten, murdered, and men put cords around their necks, pulled as hard as they could on either side. A few days later, the bodies were found, had to be identified by their dental cavities. For a decade, this was making news. They get the suspects, they're rounded up, they're very aggressive, they're unrepentant, and it was not until they used the Mexicanness of the lead rapist. That's very weird. Are you going to boo the dog? What I'm saying is a fact. The fact that he was a Mexican national, not an American citizen, was used to overturn his death sentence. That is the first time the mainstream media so much put the word Mexican within a million miles after all of this mainstream media coverage. That is a lot of what my book is about, which is why it reads like forensic files on Law and Order. It is shocking crime after shocking crime, and yes, we are importing primitive cultures in enormous numbers, not just from Mexico, from the Middle East. Well, I did not know we had a crowd that was so fond of clitorectomies and honor killings and child rape. But apparently we do. Americans aren't used to these sorts of crimes, and it comes, we're not really prepared. I'm not sure we have the manpower to deal with it.
Okay, so this interview is, all right guys, the interview is working. We are getting a clearer vision of Ann Coulter. Okay? So if you are from one of those primitive cultures, then you know which side you're on, right? Is she on your side? Are the Republicans on your side? I don't know. Well, I do know, of course. Now, Ann, you mentioned a couple of horrific cases that happen to be done by Latinos, Mexican nationals, etc. Now, can I do that with white people? Easiest thing in the world. I mean, yes, there's the Jean-Benet Ramsey, there's
It's
there are
irrelevant.
a whole, when it's white people, it's irrelevant. When it's white people, it's irrelevant. But when it's Mexicans, they are primitive. They are primitive.
Our native criminals. We have no choice. There's no reason for us to be bringing in other countries' criminals, in addition to the fact that, yes, child rape, honor killings, clitorectomies, haven't seen a lot of that in Anglo-America. It is primitive cultures, and I guess we also know that this is an audience that does support clitorectomies, honor killings, and child rape.
No, and we don't describe it to so-called primitive cultures coming from a certain ethnicity like you do. For example, the example I was going to use was we just covered on the Young Turks about a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, a guy who had raped a 2-year-old, and it was his girlfriend's daughter, and he was a white guy, and you would have said, why didn't they mention that he was white? He was so white when he did that rape.
I'm quite sure the media reported that, and by the way, I don't notice any of my side in the room booing you for mentioning that. We don't have this ethnic thing of...
And I guess you're not getting
I
it.
must have to defend Jeffrey Dahmer, because he's white. Don't punish him. But gosh, a lot of people were upset when I was talking about Mexican child rapes and Muslims honor killing and Muslim clitorectomies. Oh, no, we must defend them. White people don't do that.
Hold on. And apparently you're not getting it. So let me be a little clearer. Because no one in this room thinks that that guy did the rape because he was white. Okay? And no one thinks that the couple of Latinos that you chose to demonize, not those particular guys, what they did was horrific, did it because they were Latinos or they were Mexican nationals. Only you think that because what you want to do, unlike the rest of us, is say, it's the Latinos. It's the brown people. Watch out for them. They're rapists. They're criminals. That's really what you say. That's what we're going to stop.
What I'm saying is, which you just studiously are ignoring, is it is the immigrants, i.e. people who do not have a right to be here. Again, we can't do anything about our native-born criminals. We can't do anything about our native-born poor. I'd love to deport them. And no, it isn't the brown people, because the things I'm talking about, honor killings, clitorectomies, child rape, no, you don't see this among American blacks, you don't see it among American whites. We have our own country, native family. We know what our crimes are like. We are bringing in extremely peasant cultures with things we have never seen before, and it's being hidden from us. And it isn't just the occasional Jeffrey Dahmer. Look at the LA Most Wanted list. It is one Mexican or Hispanic name after another, and it heavily child rape. I mean, there's no question that we're bringing in cultures where child rape is much more common, and this is being hidden from us.
All right, so in one side of your mouth, and so again, in an effort at clarity, at one side of your mouth, you say, no, it's just an immigration problem, and so I'm talking about people who are here illegally. And then you turn around and say it's one...
Not illegally.
And you say it's one Hispanic name after another. It's a culture, you just said a peasant culture, by the way, if you didn't hear it. So you talk about, and then I mentioned brown, you said, no, it's not about brown. So let me quote you again. The people coming in aren't the ones exalting the browning of America. It's smug liberals who want America to be humbled and destroyed. So does that mean you're against the browning of America?
Oh, for Pete's sake, you worked at MSNBC every night. They're celebrating the browning of America. That's not my phrase. It's liberals constantly,
I've never heard
America.
a liberal say that.
Oh,
never, not once.
Oh,
I've never heard a liberal like, yeah, let's brown America.
Yeah, who do it right now, the browning of America? Liberals have been gloating about this. I'm quoting them. And it's not illegal immigration, it is immigration. The point of saying it is immigration is, again, to say these are people who have no right to be here. There are way too many immigrants who are criminals. There shouldn't be any. Way too many, shouldn't be any. See, it rhymes. It's easy to remember here. And I really am not getting this anger at describing clitorectomies as peasant culture. No, you're right, that's part of the advanced culture.
That
you're
is
right,
not
that's
what's happening.
That's what
Every single person in this room
a developed nation with clitorectomies, honor killings, and child rape.
No, you see, it's... Now, let me explain to the audience the incredibly simplistic rhetorical trick she's using, okay? So, she says, oh, Latinos have a peasant culture, they're all coming in here and doing child rape, and then when you can say, boo, why are you against clitorectomies? I mean, or why are you for clitorectomies? No, that is one of the things that you mentioned. That's not what they're booing at. Okay? No, hold on. And then the same rhetorical trick. Hey, and maybe we shouldn't drop a nuke that'll kill 1 million innocent people in Iraq. Why are you for Saddam Hussein?
What kind of culture does have a clitorectomy? What kind? Yes, primitive cultures. The reason, I'm not saying it is brown people who are peasant cultures, I'm saying we are bringing in peasant cultures from around the world. Latin America, Mexico happens to be the peasant culture that's closest to us. And why are we bringing in peasant cultures? To help. The Democrats want the votes, and the rich want the cheap labor and the cheap maids, and you people are cheering on the plutocrats with their cheap maids driving down the wages of Americans. I just don't see why we can't care about Americans first. We have our own poor people, and they're the ones who are living next door to the peasant culture, doing things like child rape. I mean, it's not George Soros or Warren Buffett's children who are going to have to worry about being raped by a peasant culture that's been brought in here. It's all being dumped on the middle class, the lower class in America, and that includes immigrants who went to a lot of trouble to escape the peasant cultures they were living in because they wanted to live in America. And if you don't cut off bringing in millions and millions of these very backwards cultures, we're not going to have America anymore. Not the America that people struggled to come to. For some reason they came here, they didn't go to Honduras, they didn't go to Bangladesh, they didn't go to Indonesia, they wanted to live in America. I wanted to live in America. Can't we please save America?
This is wonderful, wonderful. I had hoped to achieve some level of clarity, and I believe we are on that road. So, every time Ann Coulter attends a CPAC conference, every time she's invited on by a Republican politician, and then you wonder why Latinos and Mexicans might not vote for Republicans or conservatives, as she repeats over and over again, about a dozen times so far, you people come from a peasant culture. You know, when you're peasant maids and all the things. You didn't say peasant culture? Is that right? I think some people have their iPhones out. I know you people come from a peasant. Oh, she didn't say you people. She didn't say you people. She said you peasants.
If it's the same, if you're like paraphrasing accurately, if it's the same, just use my words.
Okay. Believe me, your words are now all over the internet. So now you have lamented, even though you claim it's liberals who say Browning, never once said by any liberal. I've seen you quoted 3 times. I have seen you quoted at least 3 times lamenting the Browning of America. How would you like to un-brown us? Would you kick some brown folks in the country out? Would you want to just celebrate whiteness more? What would you like to do as you lament the brownness of the country?
Immigration is a policy we don't have to have. Any government policy ought to be used to serve the people already living here, all the people already living here. That is not the way our immigration policy is being used. It's being used, and I really don't understand, whatever side of the spectrum you're on, unless unless you are a billionaire who really needs a lot of cheap labor, immigration is a net loss to you. This is what is driving income inequality in this country. This is what is...
No, it's not the bankers. No. It's not the tax cuts for the rich that she pushes. It's not the tax cuts, and it's not all the billions of trillions of dollars given to the bankers. That's not pushing income inequality. It's the most powerless people in the country that have somehow captured the power and are driving income inequality by being so poor. Yeah, it's the maids that are so powerful in this country and creating income inequality.
That's exactly what I'm saying. They have no
I know, that is exactly what you're saying. And it's amazing to me that you don't see how preposterous it sounds. Like, oh, the maids, what they've done to this country. Cleaning here and there.
Because I think you're just going to mischaracterize everything I say and I'll be halfway through it. Look, it is the poorest who are...
I like that it's again down to 3 to 4 people clapping.
It is the poorest people who are having immigrants coming in to compete for their jobs. They are not competing for the bankers' jobs. They are making sure that the bankers have very cheap nannies, maids, pool boys, drivers. Meanwhile, all jobs are being outsourced so that the rich can become even richer. But we have our own poor people, we have our own middle class people. They're the ones, I think, an immigration policy should be geared to helping. And you're not helping people by pretending the laws of supply and demand don't work when it comes to bringing in workers who are going to compete only with our poorest Americans. Actually, it's moving up into our middle class Americans with the H-1B visas and all of the computer programmers who their jobs are being taken too. No, it's the very rich who are benefiting from this dump of cheap labor on the country that also happens to be changing the culture. And their maids aren't living in their neighborhoods. Okay. No, they're coming in from the suburbs. They're not seeing what's happening, how the country is changing, and how people are suffering. I say we have an immigration moratorium until our unemployment rate is 0. When it's 0, then we can bring in more workers to compete for the world.
In other words, fight amongst yourselves while Ann and the Republicans push for more tax cuts for the same people creating income inequality.
I think I'm perfectly capable of speaking for myself, and instead of letting me, well, eventually letting me answer, and then saying, in other words, you people suck is what she's saying. I think they heard what I said.
I know, I love it. I couldn't possibly do more damage to you.
Because you then have to mischaracterize it in other words.
Do you want tax cuts for the rich? Speak for yourself. No, speak for yourself. Do you want tax cuts for the rich? Do you want tax cuts for the rich? Do you want tax cuts for the rich? Do you want further tax cuts?
No, I love Trump's tax plan. And where's Hillary? Where's Chuck Schumer? She's been sitting on the finance committee. They represent New York. Trump is showing how both political parties are controlled by the plutocrats, and that no one has come forward all this time to say George Soros and Warren Buffett should pay as much as the middle class does.
Trump's tax plan has
Donald Trump to say
all right. Look, again, Politicon working. Trump's tax plan has enormous problems and is giant giveaways for the rich. But she is right that on hedge funds, private equity guys, if you'd like to raise their taxes, we're going to get a deal. I would love to do that.
Why hasn't the Republican or especially Democratic Party, which is really beholden to the left on this, they're the ones who get the Wall Street money. Obama got more than anybody else.
In 2008, not 2012. Okay, so look, I'll tell you why. It's legalized bribery. It's money in politics. And no one takes, and the Democrats are definitely guilty. You're not going to get me to defend a Democrat on that. But the Republicans, if you haven't noticed, the Republican Party is 99% bought and sold by billionaires and corporations.
Not Donald Trump.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I know you want to go to Q&A. We're running a little short on time. You mentioned women before, and you don't like to mention women's issues. But quick question on that, since you did mention it. You say if we took away women's right to vote, we'd never have to worry about another Democratic president. Actually, you said Democrat president. It's kind of a pipe dream. It's a personal fantasy of mine.
Yeah.
So you would like to take women's right to vote away from them, including your own?
I think it was a rash experiment, and I'm not sure it worked out, this women's suffrage business.
Another hyperbole, or like the nukes you kind of mean?
Oh no, I told you that.
Oh, you mean it? Okay. Once again, we have achieved clarity. All the women in the room, she would like to take your right to vote away.
Vote per household.
Okay, clarity. I love the clarity. Okay. I didn't put words in your mouth there, right?
Next question.
All right. So, for the next question, we're going to go to the audience. Because I had more quotes about women, but you already agreed. We've got 10 minutes for Q&A. I can't wait for this. I have no idea how we're conducting it. Okay, I am going to randomly call people. Oh, you're a woman. I don't know if you're allowed to. Is she allowed? Oh my God, you're all so brown.
Well, that's certainly what the left is. Oh, good question. What about that we shouldn't go to war with other countries because someday soon we're not going to be the biggest dog on the block? Well, yeah, that's certainly the goal of the left. That's the subtitle of my book. The left's plan to turn our country into a third world hellhole. There are a certain number of Americans who think hate America and think it should be humbled and destroyed, and we won't be the superpower. And that will be a dark time. I mean, leaving aside the specifics of particular wars here and there, because at the moment I agree with you. Like I say, I'm a pacifist who believes in the liberal use of daisy cutters and nukes. I mean, it's not just going to be sad for the people who live here. It's going to be sad for the entire world, because America has been an amazing force for good in the world. One of the things that annoys me about immigrants coming in, the ones who immediately have grievances and start attacking America. Look, I'm annoyed enough when a 10th generation American attacks our country. You just got here, getting off the gangplank and attacking us. But that happens quite a bit, and it is immigrants piggybacking on the black experience in America. Immigrants, you're not black. The reason Americans are sensitive to race is because of slavery, because of Jim Crow. Yes, this country does owe something to black Americans. I'm not sure Democrats feel like that. We don't owe anything to the rest of the world. Most of what we've done is rush around and save you from earthquakes and tsunamis and warlords, Nazis. We have been such a force for good in the world. I wouldn't expect, don't expect Mexico to come save you when you have your next tsunami. Don't expect, China to go in and stop the next Hitler. It's going to be 1,000 years of darkness if this country stops being this country and we just become a second Mexico, which is where we're headed right now.
All right, there's so much to say, but I just going to give you one more Ann Coulter quote here, and then we'll take another question. In 1960, whites were 90% of the country. The Census Bureau recently estimated that whites already account for less than 2/3 of the population and will be a minority by 2050. Other estimates put that day much sooner. One may assume the new majority will not be such compassionate overlords as the white majority has been.
Yes, I can illustrate
Said the woman who just said, oh yeah, we might owe blacks a couple of things, but I mean, the whites have been such sensitive overlords of minorities in this country.
You did the in other words again. I said nothing of the sort. I am saying black Americans, people who are descended from slaves and from people who are discriminated.
I know, but in that quote, I know that sounds better in the original German, right?
Jim Crow. Oh, that's so original. Oh, I've are enslaved, who are victims of Jim Crow, incidentally enforced by the Democrats.
Instead of wasting that time repeating
now
your point, I was asking about that quote,
well, if you're going to
where
do
you
it, in
said
other
that
words,
whites were
yes,
such
I
benevolent overlords.
got the question. But you're, in other words, here is wasting a lot of time. No, it wasn't in other words. You said something about black people. I was talking about how the country is changing from immigrants we are bringing in who are piggybacking on the black experience. Will the new immigrant, my overlords, be as compassionate as the white overlords are? I think it was illustrated when you read that quote. When you got to, whites will be a minority, I heard the audience cheer. Can you imagine an audience of white people cheering? Oh, it's going to be all white. No, you cannot. Those are the new overlords.
Any seatback speech you give, they would love that line. Yes, I can imagine that audience. Okay. All right, I want to take somebody on her side. Someone like the three people.
No. I don't want anybody on my side.
All right, there's somebody who's standing. All right, yes. Wait, no, a woman standing back there.
My dad and his 4 brothers have been in construction in San Diego for my whole life, and just seeing the effects of millions and millions of low-wage workers driving down their wages. They cannot get a union job, and as employers would rather hire really low-wage workers. And I'm just wondering, like, how can we drive the minimum wage up and start raising it?
It is entirely a problem of immigration. Instead of dumping low-wage workers on the country and then artificially setting a high minimum wage, which leaves lots of people unemployed, do it the way Australia and New Zealand and other countries have done it. They look around the country, figure out, oh, we have a shortage of, surgeons over here, of journalists. Well, there's never a shortage of journalists, but in theory. Over here, we'll bring in people who fill these particular slots. And the minimum wage in Australia and New Zealand is about $15 an hour. I haven't checked this recently, but roughly in the last year. Naturally, it's the law of supply and demand. Stop dumping low-wage workers on the country, and wages naturally rise because you have to compete with dollars to get those workers. I also add here, this is a problem where you do need a national solution. You can't just have like one construction guy or one farmer guy saying, well, the farmers, they're just lazy screw-offs. Buy a machine. They're machines that can pick strawberries when they're different. They can pick tomatoes. They can do all this work. But they're very expensive machines. No one farmer is going to do this out of the goodness of his heart. No one employer is going to do it out of the goodness of his heart. Take the cheap labor away, and they'll pay more.
Okay, real quick clarification. She asked about the minimum wage. Just real quick. So are you in favor of raising the minimum wage?
Naturally, I'm in favor of it being naturally raised.
So not by law?
The iron law of supply and demand.
So not by law? Not by law? So just be clear to the person who asked the question. The answer is no, not by law.
Every answer is in other words.
Right. No, but you just said it. I just want to be clear.
I think it was perfectly clear. It was unclear your fake version of my answer.
Last one.
Hi, Anne. I'm from one of those peasant cultures to which you so eloquently refer to. Although my great-grandparents had PhDs, so thank you for, putting me in that category as well as most of the people in this room. Thank you very much. My question to you is, when you say just drop nukes and daisy cutters and all this bullshit on people who live, people who are on this planet, human beings, what makes you different? What differentiates you from ISIS and Daesh and Wahhabism?
one that would assassinate a We don't assassinate our political science PhDs, so I would say right there we got a better culture.
She said her family was assassinated in the Soviet Union. I think we all agree we have a better culture. Okay?
I think that, well, good. Let's all agree that the Soviet Union is a peasant culture then. Get on that. Okay, so why are you living in Afghanistan if it's such a great peasant culture? Oh my God. That's not a good culture.
And you didn't answer her
I
question.
don't know if you picked.
So it's a nice effort at deflection, but don't.
Because this is just a silly point about war. Look, if there's a point to going to war, there's no point to war. I'm saying if there's a point to going to war, I don't want any Americans dying for a regime change when you were going to have a President Obama come in and reverse the victory of that war. The question is whether it's worth going to war. I don't think it is, but it's going to be a long conversation. The point is, apparently you do come from a peasant culture if you are here.
That doesn't make any sense at all. I call me around. I came to Turkey.
So why aren't you there?
Because I love this country. I love this country. That doesn't mean I hate my former country. That means I love this country. You know why? Because it isn't a Christian nation. It isn't a nation just for white people. Because I believe
white people. And the only way to keep we're going to prevent any portions of the globe from not entirely becoming a place where a political science PhD will be assassinated and women are at risk for female genital mutilation and honor killings, is if we stop those cultures from coming here. The only way to stop mass migrations and refugees is for the entire world to be no different from any other place. And we'll all be living in Afghanistan, and who's going to suffer the most? The poor, the weak, women, children, plants, animals, and any victims of earthquakes, tsunamis, or Nazis. Without America out there, you just have a whole globe of Afghanistan. There's no point in moving from one country to another because they're all the same.
All right, we guys, I love your participation in this. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for coming. You're her fan?
Yeah.
All right, one last question. One super last question. Hurry up. Go.
Do you think the Iran deal will ignite the third Lebanon war?
The answer is, who cares? They're all brown. Sorry, that wasn't in other words. Go ahead.
What's the question? Do you honestly think that it's going to start a war with the money that we're supposedly
Do I think what is going to start?
The Iran deal.
The Iran deal. The Iran deal? I think the Iran deal. I'm with Trump, and he's a great negotiator. It's a bad deal. Why should we be helping Iran?
All right, so let me leave you with this.
Also, Iran had something that was plentiful, that could be used for energy. They need nukes.
I want to thank Cenk Uygur for coming here. I want to leave by giving her the last word. Because she asked why I came to America. I came to America because I love America. I love our Constitution. And Cenk Uygur has said, frankly, I'm not a big fan of the First Amendment. So,
Obviously,
another day we can have a conversation.
You have to explain one like that. You guys really are humorless. At least you're not giving me a
That was a joke when she was saying they dig at our founding fathers. Okay.
Next
So
time.
thank you, all of you, thank you.
What I said is what I said. His and other words are not what I said.
Luckily, it's somewhat on there. Thank you guys.
She got up and left. Wow. Yeah. We just thought that was pretty
Check. Ladies and gentlemen, I please need everyone to exit this room. Please head to the back and exit the room. Thank you.
Get everybody out beforehand. Now it's everybody at the door. So it's totally last shall we first now. Like, oh, you got stuck outside last one? Now you get first.
They don't even know their own statistics that they're like fighting for per se. You know what I mean? They were like, you told their fans.
But it's a bunch of middle-aged guys now. I know. Yeah. It's Wesley.